I was only gone for 30 minutes. I begged him to watch our son. When I came back, my baby was cold. My husband had unplugged the oxygen machine, so he could watch football. My name is Miriam Lewis. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I lost everything in one night, and how I made sure the man responsible paid for it. I never thought I would be telling this story. I never imagined life could twist like this. But now, I need to say it out loud because sometimes pain has to be spoken to stop it from eating you alive. Let me take you back. My son Noah was born 3 years ago. He was a miracle. A small, quiet, sleepy little boy with the softest curls and the biggest brown eyes. But Noah wasn't like most babies. He was born with chronic lung disease. That meant he couldn't breathe like other children. His lungs were weak. He needed oxygen support every day, especially when the weather changed or he got even a little cold. The first time I saw him with the tubes in his nose, I cried so much my eyes burned. But he didn't cry. He just looked up at me with this calm, almost knowing face. He was stronger than all of us. Taking care of him wasn't easy. I had to quit my job. Barely slept. I was always watching the oxygen tank, cleaning his tubes, counting his breaths, listening for alarms. At first my husband, Jordan, was there. He held Noah's tiny hand in the hospital. He cried when the doctor said our son might not walk until age 5. But somewhere along the line, Jordan changed. He got tired. Tired of the crying, tired of the machines, tired of being needed. He lost his job, and instead of looking for another one, he sat at home all day watching TV. Especially football. That was his world. Not me. Not Noah. Just football. One evening I was in the kitchen looking at the oxygen meter. It was blinking yellow. Noah had used almost all the oxygen in his tank, and the backup was nearly empty too. I had no choice. I had to go buy refills and some formula and a box of fever meds just in case. I turned to Jordan. He was on the couch, flipping through channels, waiting for the match to start. "Jordan," I said softly, "I need to go out and get oxygen for Noah. Please, just watch him for a bit. Don't touch anything. His machine is working. Everything's set. Just sit by him." He didn't look at me. He just grunted. Yeah, I've got this. Don't make me miss kickoff." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and remind him that this was our child, not a distraction. But I didn't have time. Noah had been coughing earlier, and his chest was pulling in when he breathed. Every second mattered. So I walked over to Noah. He was sitting on the floor in his soft yellow pajamas, playing with a plastic car. His oxygen tubes were still gently wrapped around his ears. I knelt down. "Mommy will be right back, okay? Be strong for me." He gave me the tiniest smile, then looked past me to the window, watching the trees sway. I kissed his forehead. "I love you." Then I grabbed my bag, my keys, and walked to the front door. My heart was already beating fast. I didn't want to leave, but I had no choice. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered one last time, "Please just watch him." The air outside was hot and sticky. I rushed down the street, thinking I'd be back in 20 to 30 minutes. I went straight to the pharmacy to get the refill, then to the small corner store for formula. The whole time I kept checking my phone. No messages, no calls. I even smiled once. Maybe Jordan was finally doing the right thing. Maybe I had overjudged him. Maybe he just needed to feel useful again. I was wrong. So wrong. As I walked back home, I remember thinking I'd make us all something warm for dinner. Maybe spaghetti. It was Noah's favorite. He called it long noodles. I had no idea what was waiting for me behind that door. But the last thing I remember from that walk was the sound of children playing down the street and me whispering to myself, "Just a normal evening. Just a quick trip. Everything will be okay." Only it wasn't. Nothing would ever be okay again. The sun had gone down by the time I got back. The street lights flickered. Crickets chirped. And everything looked normal. I walked up to the house, holding the grocery bag tightly in one hand and the oxygen refill tank in the other. But as soon as I stepped onto the porch, my stomach twisted. The lights inside were off, except for a strange flicker, blue and green, flashing through the window like a storm. It was the TV. I opened the door slowly. It wasn't locked. I walked in, my feet making soft sounds on the floor. I expected to hear Noah's cartoons. Or maybe his soft breathing. Or even Jordan's voice talking to him. But all I heard was football. Loud football commentary. Froze. Where was Noah's breathing machine? I should have heard the humming sound it always made. A soft, steady sound like wind through a tunnel. But there was nothing. Just the sound of a referee blowing a whistle, men shouting, and the TV screaming about a missed goal. My heart dropped. I called out, "Noah!" No answer. I said it again louder. "Noah!" Still no answer. I walked toward the living room, panic rising in my chest. My eyes searched for my son. For his tiny shape. For anything. That's when I saw him. He was lying on the couch. Completely still. His head resting on a small pillow. His yellow pajamas wrinkled. His oxygen tubes were on the floor. The oxygen machine was off. And the plug. It was gone from the wall. Instead, the power socket was being used for the TV. My hands started shaking. I dropped the bag of groceries. The oxygen tank rolled across the floor with a loud clank. "Noah!" I screamed. I ran to him and grabbed his tiny shoulders. He didn't move. "Noah! Baby, wake up. Mommy's here. Wake up." His face was pale. His lips, slightly blue. I placed my ear to his chest. Nothing. I touched his forehead. Cold. Too cold. I started crying. Shouting his name over and over like the sound of it could bring him back. That's when I heard a crunching sound. Jordan was sitting on the floor just a few feet away. With a bowl of chips in his lap. Eyes on the game. Yelling at the referee. He hadn't even looked up. I screamed at him. "What did you do? Why is the machine off?" He waved his hand at me like I was blocking his view. "Relax." I unplugged it for a few minutes. "It's not that serious." Not that serious. My child was not breathing. My knees hit the floor. I held Noah's face in my hands, crying so loud the neighbors could probably hear me. I tried to shake him, whisper to him, even blow into his mouth. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't think straight. I looked at the machine. It had been off for who knows how long. The screen was black. The tubes were twisted like garbage on the ground. I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and called emergency. "Please," I said through sobs. "My son, he has lung problems. He's not breathing, I think he's..." The woman on the phone told me to calm down, asked for my address, told me to start CPR. Tried. I really did. I pushed on his little chest like they taught me in the hospital when he was a baby. Counted. I whispered, "Come back, baby," between every push. But deep down, he knew. I knew the moment I walked in. I just didn't want it to be real. The ambulance came fast. The lights flashed red and white through the window. 2 paramedics rushed in. I was still crying, holding Noah when they pulled me back gently. "Ma'am, let us take over." They tried. They used their machines. They gave him air. One of them even whispered, "Come on, little man," like he was trying to talk to Noah's soul. But after 10 minutes they stopped. One of them stood up slowly, his face pale and sad. He looked at me and said words I'll never forget. "I'm sorry. He's gone." I dropped to the floor, curled up and screamed. I screamed so loud my voice broke. I screamed like a mother who had lost the only reason her heart was still beating. And through it all, Jordan sat there, still watching football, still crunching his stupid chips. Like nothing happened. When the paramedics left and the room was quiet again, I stood up. I walked over to Jordan. I looked him dead in the face. And I asked, "Why? Why did you unplug it?" He looked annoyed. Like I was ruining his night. He said, "The TV wasn't working. I needed the socket." He looked fine when I unplugged it. "You're being dramatic again." Dramatic. He called me dramatic. As our son's body lay still a few feet away. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Like a rope snapping in the middle. My hands were shaking. My mouth couldn't find words. I backed away slowly. I picked up Noah's blanket. His soft blue blanket with the tiny stars. And I held it tight against my chest. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing with full, sharp, burning clarity. I was never going to forgive this man. Not ever. He had unplugged our son for football. And now, I was going to unplug him from everything. The living room was quiet again. Too quiet. Except for the sound of the football match still playing on the TV. Crowds cheering. The ball hitting the goalpost. Players shouting in a stadium thousands of miles away. But right in front of me, my house was no longer a home. My son was gone. My hands were still shaking. I stood in front of my husband, staring at him, hoping he'd say something. Anything that made sense. Instead, he wiped his fingers on his shorts and said, "I already told you." He looked fine when I unplugged it. "You're overreacting." Overreacting. That word echoed in my head like a scream. I stepped closer, my voice shaking. "You unplugged Noah's oxygen. You left him. You didn't check on him. He needed that machine to stay alive." Jordan shrugged. "You always think everything is a big deal." He was breathing. He was just sitting there. I figured 5 minutes wouldn't hurt. 5 minutes. That's all it took to end a life. I slapped him. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I couldn't hold the rage anymore. It bubbled up through my chest and into my arm and exploded before I even realized what I was doing. He looked at me like I was the crazy one. "You just hit me. Over this." I didn't answer. Couldn't. All I could do was walk to the couch where Noah's little body still lay. The paramedics had covered him gently with a white cloth. I sat beside him. I placed my hand on his chest. No movement. No warmth. Just stillness. I started to cry again. Not loud this time. Just soft, broken sobs that shook my whole body. I remembered his laugh. The way he clapped when I made his favorite pancakes. The way he called me Mama, in that tiny voice when he was sleepy. I remembered how he was afraid of thunder, how he liked his blue sippy cup, how he said, "I strong," when he walked 2 steps without coughing. He had fought for every breath since he was born. And now he was gone. Gone because of a match. Because Jordan wanted to watch men kick a ball on TV. The next morning, I went to the hospital with Noah's body. I sat in the hallway while they did the paperwork. The doctor came out to speak with me. He was kind. His eyes looked tired and sad. He said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for your loss. Based on what you told us, the cause was most likely oxygen deprivation." I nodded, though my head felt far away. "I've seen children with this condition survive for years," he continued softly. "But when they don't get their oxygen, even for a few minutes, it can be fatal." I already knew that. I'd been trained on it when Noah first came home from the hospital. Followed the rules. I learned everything. It wasn't an accident. It was carelessness. Selfishness. The doctor handed me a report and said they were obligated to notify the authorities. That was fine with me. I left the hospital that day with Noah's blanket in one arm and the death certificate in the other. When I got home, the first thing I saw was Jordan sitting on the porch smoking a cigarette. He didn't even ask where I'd been. He just said, "What now? We gonna bury him or what?" Like it was nothing. Like he was talking about trash pickup or fixing a broken pipe. I walked past him without a word. But in my heart I was already planning. Later that night, I sat in Noah's empty room. I stared at his toys, his little books, his tiny shoes. I touched the spot where his crib used to be. I sat there for hours. Then I reached for my drawer and pulled out the folder where I kept all of Noah's medical papers. Every hospital report, every diagnosis, every oxygen refill log. I started making copies. Every time I heard Jordan laugh from the living room, I pressed the copy button harder. He thought this was over. He thought he'd go back to watching football and drinking soda and pretending like nothing happened. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The next day I called a lawyer. Her name was Grace Okoye. And from the second she answered the phone, I felt hope. I told her everything. I even sent her a voice note I had recorded months ago, one where Jordan called Noah a sick waste of time during a fight. I had saved it, not even knowing why. Grace told me to come to her office immediately. I packed everything. Noah's medical records, the hospital's report, photos of the oxygen machine unplugged, the emergency call log, and my own written statement. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You have a case. Strong one. He didn't just fail to protect his child. He caused his death through reckless negligence." That was the first time I heard the word. Negligence. It sounded cold. But it was exactly what Jordan had done. He didn't kill Noah with a weapon. He killed him by not caring. Later that week, the police came to our house. I had already moved out to stay with my sister, but Jordan was still there. They took him in for questioning. I heard from a neighbor that he had the nerve to act surprised. To say, "It was just a mistake. How can you arrest a father for one mistake?" But it wasn't just one mistake. It was years of ignoring his family. It was months of treating Noah like a burden. It was unplugging a machine that kept a child alive just so he could watch grown men run across a screen. I wasn't going to cry for Jordan. Not anymore. My tears were for my son. But my actions, they were for justice. The hospital smelled like bleach and heartbreak. I sat in the emergency room with Noah's tiny hand wrapped in mine, cold, still, and colorless. I had screamed so loudly in the ambulance, I couldn't feel my throat anymore. But now I was silent. Hello. The doctor stepped in with soft eyes. I didn't need him to say it. Already knew. But he said it anyway. "I'm so sorry. There was nothing we could do." He passed from severe oxygen deprivation. I nodded slowly. My heart didn't break again. It had already shattered. Now I was staring at the pieces. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just whispered, "Thank you," and kissed Noah's little fingers. They moved his body. A white sheet. A quiet hallway. The finality of death wrapped around me like a heavy fog. When I got back home, the house didn't feel like a home. Felt like a crime scene. My baby had taken his last breath here, while his own father had sat beside him screaming at a football match. I walked past the couch. The spot where Noah had lain cold. The oxygen machine stood there. Still off. Still unplugged. The TV. Still glowing. Still loud. I turned it off. I turned everything off. And then I turned on the one thing I still had left. My anger. My name is Ruth. I'm 27 years old. And I'm about to make sure this monster never hurts another child again. I gathered every document from Noah's hospital visits. Doctor's notes, prescriptions, his diagnosis, even the pamphlets explaining his condition. I printed them out, stacked them in a neat folder. I included the note from the ER doctor who signed Noah's death report. Oxygen deprivation due to interrupted supply. Clear as day. I took photos of the oxygen machine. Of the socket with the extension cord still leading to the TV. I printed screenshots of my husband's sports group chats, where he bragged about watching the best match of the season. He even posted a selfie, smiling, while Noah was dying a few feet away. I created a timeline of that day. Every minute, every errand, every warning I gave. I had the truth. And I had the rage of a grieving mother. That was enough. The next morning I went straight to the police station. I filed a formal report. Child neglect. Wrongful death. The officers looked stunned. One of them even whispered, "He really unplugged his own son's oxygen." He nodded. So he could watch a match. They didn't even wait. They issued a protective order immediately. They told me to stay away from him, for my safety. He wasn't violent. But they said sometimes negligence turns into danger when men like him lose control. "Don't worry," I told them. "I'm not the one who's going to break." He came to the house the next day, but I was already gone. I had packed a single suitcase and moved in with my cousin. I left the locks changed and the restraining order pinned to the front door. He banged and shouted. He begged. He threatened. He even cried. But I didn't come out. I didn't even peek through the blinds. He tried calling me dozens of times. Left voice messages like, "I didn't mean it. It was just a match. You're making this worse. You think this is what Noah would have wanted. Oh, how dare he. You don't get to say my son's name after killing him." So I made my next move. I contacted a local journalist. She had once done a feature on children with disabilities and access to medical care. I told her everything. She didn't blink. She just nodded and hit record. I told my story from the beginning. From Noah's birth to that final 30-minute run, to the way my husband had waved me off without even looking up. I showed her the pictures, the hospital records, the voice messages. She cried. Then she published. The story hit social media like wildfire. Man unplugs son's oxygen for football game. 3-year-old dies. Mother shares heart-wrenching story of neglect and loss. Hashtag justice for Noah. People were furious, outraged, disgusted. They flooded his jobs page, demanding action. Within 48 hours he was suspended. Within a week fired. His friends turned on him. His family stopped defending him. He went online trying to explain himself, saying it was an accident, or she's exaggerating, or the oxygen wasn't that low. But the world had already seen Noah's picture. The world had already decided. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because silence is how monsters stay protected. And Noah's voice had been stolen. So now mine would be loud enough for both of us. Every day after, I wrote one letter to Noah. I kept them in a box under my pillow. I told him what I was doing, what the world was saying, how proud he would be. I told him, "You didn't die in vain." And I meant it. Because I had one final step left. And I was ready to take it. The courtroom was cold, too cold. Or maybe it was just me. I sat at the front, holding Noah's favorite blue blanket in my lap. It still smelled like him, baby powder, warm milk, and a little vanilla. I clutched it like a lifeline as the judge read the final decision. "Mr. Daniel Okoye," the judge began, "this court finds you guilty of gross negligence resulting in the wrongful death of a minor, your son Noah Okoye. You are hereby sentenced." I didn't hear the rest. My ears rang. My heart raced. But a strange calm settled over me. It was done. The law had seen what I already knew. He killed our son. Daniel didn't look at me as they handcuffed him. He stared at the floor like a coward. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he cry. Not even when I stood and walked past him, Noah's blanket pressed to my chest, my eyes meeting his one last time. "I hope football keeps you warm in prison," I whispered, not with hate but with pain. He blinked, but still said nothing. The divorce was finalized the same day. I took nothing but my freedom and my memories. Noah's room stayed exactly the same for weeks. His little bed, his toy dinosaur, the framed picture of the three of us, back when we were pretending to be a happy family. I couldn't bear to move anything. Every night I sat on the edge of his bed and cried. I blamed myself. If I hadn't gone to get those groceries. If I had just stayed. But I knew the truth. I didn't kill Noah. Daniel did. With his laziness, his selfishness, and his cold heart. A few months later, I found a small note in one of Noah's coloring books. I had given it to him when he was in the hospital during one of our longer stays. In his shaky 3-year-old writing, he had written, "Mommy is my best friend," and drawn 2 stick figures, me and him, holding hands under a smiling sun. I broke down again that night. But not out of pain. This time I felt something new. Purpose. I sold our old house and moved to a small flat in Ikeja. I started a charity in Noah's name called Noah's Breath. The goal was simple. Help mothers with sick children who couldn't afford oxygen or backup power. I knew what it felt like to lose your child because of something so simple. So basic. So preventable. I partnered with a solar tech company and we started installing solar-powered oxygen systems in homes around Lagos. By the end of the year, we had saved 47 children. That number kept growing. Every time a mother sent me a message saying, "Your charity saved my baby," I felt Noah smiling in heaven. One day, while leaving the office, a little boy about Noah's age ran up to me and handed me a flower. "Are you the Noah lady?" he asked. I smiled through tears. "Yes, I am." He gave me a hug. "Thank you for helping my baby sister breathe." I cried the whole drive home. I never remarried. I don't think I ever will. Some people say I'm strong. Some say I'm brave. But the truth is, I'm just a mother who had no choice. My son didn't deserve to die because of someone else's laziness. So I made sure his death wasn't in vain. Daniel is still in prison. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about Noah, about what he did. But then I stop myself. He made his choice. He unplugged the machine. So I unplugged the marriage. And I plugged in a purpose. One that breathes life into other children every single day. Noah may be gone, but his breath lives on. And I will never let the world forget him. Not for 1 second.